To talk about the best nationalist or patriotic speech that I've seen this year, and that was Mark Collett's speech at the Patriotic Alternative Conference in 2025 this year. And it's fun stuff. It's good gossipy stuff. It's nice gossip, so there's no harm in it. And what I should say is a good speech is not about the pauses and poise and posture. It's not about Nigel Farage pulling silly faces that he thinks make him look intelligent, or Keir Starmer misreading the auto cue and faking sincerity. I think the key to a good speech, a good talk, is about keeping a clear eye on reality. Seeing reality right. I would call that realism. And I would say that's the main cardinal virtue. That is in fact what the Catholic Church says. It's not courage. According to the Catholic Church, it's prudence, which is really the ability to see reality right, to be able to distinguish things. Now, I think also if you twin this with its sister virtue, compassion, or the wish to help other people, then I think that is pretty good. And I think there is evidence of that as well in Mark Collett's speech. In it, again, and the hallmark, I think, is its complete lack of demagoguery. He knows it's going to make him unpopular with some people, but he's going to spell out reality clearly. Anyway, it's not done for clicks or likes, but out of the wish to help people to see what's happening and to find a way out of it. And I think that is helpful to people. And that is based on the wish to help people. Now, I want to go through it for three reasons. The first is if someone is spelling out reality, then I want to spread that, because I think you can't have too much of that. And I think there is too little of that these days. And second is to give credit. I think Mark Collett and the British National Party in general are due a lot more credit than they've had, partly because of speeches like this that he makes, which are good, but also what they were doing nearly 25 years ago, long before I had any involvement at all. And that was in the northern towns, highlighting the Islamic rape gangs and what they were doing, trying to put the spotlight on that and getting into a lot of trouble, including an extremely political prosecution in 2006. I've read online, I don't know how much credence I can give to it, is that the reason for the Muslim riots in Bradford and Oldham in 2001 was that you had the British National Party highlighting, focusing, trying to bring attention to the Islamic rape gangs, and shortly after that, you had a local football derby, which was normally a grudge match and would end in a fist fight, and the football fans unusually showed some sense and said, let's not have a fist fight with each other. Let's direct our hostility against the perpetrators of these appalling crimes, the Islamic gang rapists. And when they left, when the football fans had left, and it was safe to do so, then the Muslims went out and rioted across Bradford and Oldham. And these were serious riots as well. They could have been fatal. And so I think the British National Party and Mark Collett's role in it, I think that still deserves a lot of credit. That's due a knighthood at any time under any government. Now, the third reason that I want to talk about this speech is because large parts of it agree with me. And so that gives me the chance to kind of, again, go and bang on about my own views and shed some light on my own views on how I think we will regain and retake our towns and cities, what the authorities are doing and why, and how it ends, and particularly the thing that I focus on, the destructive and critical influence of the welfare state in all of this. Well, if that makes me unpopular, so be it. Now, if I deal with my own views first, hold on. There we are. You can see I've long said that we're not going to vote our way out of this. We're going to collapse our way out of this. And these are a couple of videos you can look at, that one there. And that one also, solutions brute force won't work, basically explaining how the state can't do it. So we're not going to vote our way out of this. You can watch both of those if you want. That second one describes the British Army being given the task of sifting and sorting through by ethnicity the population of a tower block in Leicester, and how difficult that's likely to be just with one tower block. So imagine how bad it'll be going through every crawl space in the country, every loft space, every cupboard, every space under the stairs. So that is my view. In more detail, what I want to deal with is the what I call the collapse solution, which is on Twitter. So and I'll go through it now. It's a little bit wordy, I'm afraid. Firstly, the economy will break down. I think that's likely to happen beginning of the next decade, 5 or 6 years, early 2030s, I would say. If the economy breaks down, government goes broke, government can't then pay welfare, so the welfare state breaks down. They're not going to tell you, and when it happens, I think that will happen fast. You'll suddenly find, hold on, my welfare check or the rent check hasn't landed. I think we'll go down to the local council office, and you'll find there's no one there at the local council office. Or you might suddenly you find that half a school gets closed because it's unsafe. It was due to be repaired, but the money hasn't arrived to repair it. The builders have been fired. Or you might find that you got a hospital and a couple of hospital wards have been closed, or the whole hospital has been closed because it can't open because there are no cleaners to prevent infection coming. So I think it's likely to be as bad as that. If the welfare state breaks down, I think the authority of the state will break down. I think we give authority to the state not because of the state apparatus, things like police, jails, and the army, basically order and security. It's because of the welfare and management of the economy that we think that the state provides to us. And that's the reason we vote for the state. That's the reason we give them authority over us. Now, if the authority of the state goes down, then its tax collecting ability will collapse. So you get into a feedback loop. The authority of the state slips, then it slips more, then it slips more, and the more it slips, the faster it slips, until it just has no authority, whatever, because it's got no money, can't pay anyone, no one will work for it anymore. And you'll know when this is about to happen. Really, two things. Government deficit for the year will hit 20% of GDP. And secondly, the window cleaner, the local council's window cleaner, suddenly says, I am not cleaning your windows on credit. I want to be paid up front because I don't think you're going to pay me. I don't trust you to pay me because I think you're going broke. When that happens, it's game up. Everyone else will do it and they'll just seize up. So if the authority of the state goes down, then I think crime and disorder then explode, because if cops cease to get paid, a lot of them will find, well, it's a lot more profitable to become a kidnapper or a home invader, maybe to become a local gangster or an enforcer for a gang lord myself. Burglars will promote themselves to being home invaders. Cars won't stop at traffic lights because that's where the carjackers are. And that is very, very dangerous. That is really scary when crime just explodes like that, because you never know when your windows, someone's going to come crashing through your front window. And then our primal need for law will assert itself. And this is the nerdy bit, number 5 here. And I'm going to repeat this because I think this is key. I think this is essential. It's the bit that people don't understand, the bit that people leave out. And this is where I think we will seek protection of the law via self-governing legal charters or codes that you join voluntarily, like a club. So currently, the law is something that's imposed on all of us, whether we like it or not, by the overarching state imposes it on us. If the state collapses and goes away, I think we won't be able to get that overarching authority from the state, so we will club together to get it, because we need law. We need the protection of law. We are willing to abide by the law if it means we're protected but by the law. So like joining a club where each member agrees he can be punished if he doesn't treat the other members according to the rules. So the rules say we don't steal from each other, we don't rape each other, we don't kill each other, etc. And those rules effectively will be the law. And it becomes law that you vote for with your feet, not with the ballot. And that's a big distinction. People who make decisions by voting with their feet, by making individual decisions, make very hard-headed, sensible, sharp, intelligent decisions. People who vote with the ballot tend to have a lot of other really perverse incentives, like how good does it make me feel? How good do I feel about myself? Because it doesn't, my vote has no effect. It's drowned out by all the other votes. So I'll vote simply to feel good about myself. And then when people vote via the ballot, you get all kinds of idealistic slop that we're subjected to so much today. Also, clubbing together for welfare, which is a very, very big incentive, and demonstrating and applying pressure for welfare. Now, if you have that sort of legal system where you join a legal system voluntarily, and there might be competing ones for your attention, and if you have complete freedom of association and non-association. We don't have that now. We're forced to deal with the foreigners who are foisted upon us. We don't have freedom of non-association. We can't say, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to live near you. I don't want to employ you. I don't want to be to do a job for you. But if that goes away and we have complete freedom of association and non-association, plus being forced to rely on ourselves and our neighbours for our safety and security, then number 7, we will separate out hard along ethnic lines. I think very hard indeed, and shocking. I think that ethnic separation will shock a lot of us. It'll be very tough, very hard, and because we will only trust people who look, act, think, and speak like us with our safety and security. We're not going to trust. No English person will trust invader foxes to safeguard their hen house. We're not going to trust foreigners to help us secure our own safety, and they won't trust us either because they don't know. They can't. We can't gauge how each other reacts. We can't be sure that each other will react in a way that we like. And so at that point, populations will separate out hard and will impose their own forms of law. I think we, in English areas, will adopt the forms of law that I've outlined here that are a bit like a club. I think in Islamic areas, they would impose Sharia law, probably a very aggressive form of it, in order to bind together different ethnicities within each area. That only the most aggressive form will be man enough to maintain authority over different village groups. Okay, now, and so what that will mean is you will get foreign enclaves. So you'll get English areas, you'll get Islamic areas, African areas, West Indian areas, Sikh areas, Hindu areas, Shia Sunni areas, and all quite hostile to us. I think the biggest divide will be between the English area and the foreigner areas, and I think that will probably be very hard. I imagine quite a lot of barbed wire. I'm talking about the areas where you simply say, this is our area, that's your area. You don't come into our area without our permission, or else you just don't come into our area at all. And what that will mean for the foreign areas is that once they're deprived of contact with the productive English, the English population, they'll be deprived of any source of income. Employment opportunities will vanish. Not to mention welfare will go when the state goes down, but also employment opportunities. So there's no way to generate wealth. So how do you buy food? How do you heat your home if you're not able to generate wealth and if you have no welfare? And also no means to maintain essential amenities of the institutions of civil society, but also essential amenities like gas, electricity, water, or drainage. Now think about that. Think about the effect that has. What that will mean is conditions in those foreigner enclaves will plummet fast. As I say here, hellish within weeks. And then the people in those foreign enclaves will be amenable to leaving voluntarily, perhaps given a free airline ticket. So that's the way I think it will work out. The key bit that people miss out is part 5, which deals with the kind of legal system that I think we're going to get. Now, this system was summarised much better than I could, in a much shorter way by this lady, Catherine Blakelock. I like her. She seems pretty sound. She founded the Brexit Party with Nigel Farage, and now she's with Rupert Lowe. Lamb Screams, I think it's a kind of an animal welfare organisation that campaigns against halal slaughter. So good for her, caring for the animals. I like that, and against Islam. So that's a real twofer. So, and what she's saying, the way she summarises what I'm saying, is we won't vote our way out. Finance will collapse the government and social security. That will lead to violence. The violence will lead to ethnic segregation. Ethnic areas with no benefits, I would say with no benefits and no employment opportunities, will collapse fastest, or no wealth creation opportunities will collapse fastest, and then they'll be more amenable to a ticket home. She doesn't really get to grips with the legal side that I'm outlining. I don't blame her for that. So That's what I think is going to happen. Let's get down to what Mark Collett says. What he's saying is victory is not around the corner, and I agree with him there. I have found the people who say victory is around the corner are people who want to be activists, but they don't have the room in their lives, they don't have the stamina to keep it up for very long. So what they're trying to say to themselves is, it's all going to blow apart within a matter of weeks or months. It's about to happen. We're on the cusp of something big, and persuading them, they need to persuade themselves of that so they can keep going for a little while longer. Otherwise, what would be the point? If it's going to take years and they can only last for a few months, well, it's a problem for them. So that's the hallmark of the activist without stamina, saying it's all gonna happen. Well, victory is just around the corner. What he also says is that we are not going to vote our way out of this, and I want to bring this little clip up here.
Now, the first group of people is, of course, those who think we're going to vote our way out of this mess. They naively believe that we will stand as candidates, tell the public what we think, the public will come to their senses, vote us in, and the next day we're just going to put the immigrants on boats, send them home, and we all live happily ever after. People have been doing this since the 1960s, and every attempt to do it has failed miserably. But not only has it failed miserably, it's cost millions of pounds and countless man-hours. And the high watermark for this electoral let's win by voting approach was the BNP in the 2000s.
I like this. We're not going to vote our way out of this. I've been saying this for years, about a decade really, that we're not going to vote our way out, we're going to collapse our way out of this. Mark Collett doesn't go so far as to say we're going to collapse our way out of it. I think he still sees some role for the state in putting this right. But that's no reason to rub his nose in it. It's no reason to be obnoxious about it. If the worst he is doing is adapting his outlook to changing circumstances, then I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is then just a sign of how fast the Overton window is moving. Now let me move on to the next little clip.
Starting another micro-party with a few hundred members that will stand half a dozen candidates and take 26 votes per seat is an absolute waste of time. And I don't want to hear any nonsense about a 20-year plan. The year is 2025, and we will be a minority by 2050. The number of times I've heard about 20-year plans, and every one of them fizzles out dismally, because they're a pipe dream. People need to understand.
I think that is a pretty clear abandonment of the electoral route. I approve of that. I think that's right. I would say, again, Mark Collett has not always held that point of view. I think up to a couple of years ago, he was talking about the 20-year route, so the 20-year lead time between getting your first parish councillor and then getting an MP or an MEP elected, and that takes 20 years, and then you can start getting a foothold on power. I think he now says, no, that's a pipe dream. Good for him. I agree with him on that. Now, the second group he talks about as being wrong are the people who talk about descending into civil war. And there are plenty of people I've noticed who talk about that with some relish, like they want it to happen. But I'll deal with this section of his speech next.
And remember, before I receive any criticism, I walked that electoral path for a decade, and I saw how easy it was for the system to snuff out a party with 14,500 members. We are not voting our way out of this mess in any conventional sense. But I did say there were two routes that people have put forward for how we attain power. Something that people have talked about post-Second World War, so I'm obviously going to address the second. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the idea of some race war. And the people who put forward this method of attaining power are actually more foolish than the ones who claim we're voting our way out of this mess. The idea that we're going to see a giant racial conflict some form of European civil war based on race where white people all rise up and fight for their collective future against some unholy alliance of left-wing activists, LGBT degenerates and ethnic minorities, has been put forward as a viable solution long before I ever came into nationalist circles. And not only hasn't it happened, but it isn't going to happen. It's a fantasy. And this solution is actually worse than the solution of relying on the public to vote their way out of this mess. And the harsh truth is that for many who claim they subscribe to the idea of a race war, it's actually little more than an excuse for them to do nothing.
I very much agree with that bit as well. I think he's right. The people who say that civil war is coming, they tend to be the people who quite want it and are just a bit too lazy to do anything to help. That's certainly been my experience. I mean, years ago, when I've been dealing with mosque campaigns, what I found is quite a lot of people, they might have a really horrible mosque proposed very close to their home, and they just won't do anything. They won't lick a stamp and send a letter to the council. And I have sort of scratched at these people quite hard to find out why, to understand this pathetic indifference and passivity. And when I've done that, when I've managed to provoke people enough, what people always say, what they do, is they eventually say, oh, we're going to sort it out ourselves in our own way one day. And what they mean is violence. And I think that a lot of people think, I don't have to do anything now. I can't be bothered. It's too much trouble. I'll get no thanks. So I won't do anything about it. And then I'll join in with the civil war when it comes, which is very stupid. Civil war is not nice. One of the main proponents of civil war, he doesn't want it. He's much too I think sophisticated and humane for that. Is a fellow called David Betts. He's a University of London professor, and my view is, I don't think he has the intellectual aggression, the mental aggression to see outside to go outside the tram lines of his academic discipline, which has been studying civil war and the route to civil war for many years. Now, I give my views on David Betts here. If you give me a second, let me just do this. That's it. In a video there from 6 months ago. Is civil war coming, David Betts? He wasn't prepared to speak with me. He told me, I don't want to speak with you because he's not a public figure. And then he goes on with, New Culture Forum, and they get 450 views overnight, I think. So I take that with a pinch of salt. So I did that video about him there. I certainly don't think he's a bad guy. What I think is that he's used to looking for the markers for civil war that he's been studying for so long. It's what he knows, that's what he sees. In the same way that David Starkey talks about the Constitution. So he thinks there's a constitutional way out, which there isn't. I think that's nonsense. But he talks about that. David Betts talks about the markers for civil war that he's been observing for so long. But I don't think that's what we're facing now. What I think we're facing now is the pile-up, the car crash between financial breakdown and our own extreme reliance upon the state, not only for our safety, but also for our material provision. And that, I think, is going to cause not so much civil war, but breakdown of the state authority, which will lead to separation out of different groups, different ethnicities, driven by fear and the need for security as much as anything else. One point where I do disagree is where he talks about governments snuffing out small parties. I don't think it's oppression which is causing us not to vote our way out of this. I think it's that we are willing to put up with an awful lot as long as the system keeps paying out, as long as the system seems to be working. Because we focus upon survival first and foremost. Survival first and foremost, civilization second. We will let civilization go hang as long as we can continue to survive. Civilization is there in order to help, to facilitate, to enhance our ability to survive. That's his purpose. That's what it's evolved for. And if we can survive without civilization, because the welfare state holds up, we will grumble a lot, but we will go along with it. So I think the fault is in us. It is not so much more in us and our own attitudes than in the oppressive state. But that then begs the question, what it happens if the welfare stops, if the welfare state breaks down. Okay, I want to deal with the next clip now. Now, this is where Mark Collett deals with the near future that he sees we're facing. I think there's substantial truth in this.
Yes, the racial and inter-ethnic conflict will get worse as the government loses control, thanks to problems created by mass immigration and the natural frictions that arise in a multicultural society. Society will decline, violence will increase, and white people will increasingly be the victims of that violence. But it won't become an all-out war. And to all those who say it will, I have two words for you. South Africa. South Africa still exists. It still just about hobbles on, and it just about functions, despite all the problems it faces. And Britain is still many decades away from being where South Africa is.
Now, I agree with this, the future of governments losing control. I think they already are, and the growth of inter-ethnic conflict. I disagree with the idea that the simile with South Africa. I don't think that is. I don't think South Africa is comparable, really for two reasons. The first reason, I think in South Africa has never had anything like the trust in the state and the welfare state that we have. No, the African population have never believed in the state as being the thing that's going to take care of them. The African population, I think, generally see the state as something to loot if you're lucky enough to get close to it. And I don't think white South Africans have ever seen the state as something they want to rely on to take care of them. And state provision is pretty much it's a modern religion for us, with the NHS being the holy altar of that religion. And I can tell that because when I point out to people that the welfare state is going to react, the sort of the angry shunning that I get, that testifies to people's belief that, or reliance upon the welfare state, the belief that it must continue, the reluctance to believe that it could break down. Secondly, I think that we, the English, I think will have a much higher standard for an ordered society than the African majority or a white minority in South Africa. I think if the law falls over, we will say, no, we want a different form of law. And the system that I'm promoting, where you vote with your feet, my system only needs to be 1% successful in order to become 100% successful. If I win 1%, I win 100%. And the reason for that is if 1% of the population sign up to a legal system like I'm describing, the key thing is it will have no taxman. Every business on the globe, in the world, will want to station itself there amongst an intelligent, hard-working, self-disciplined people, and levels of prosperity will rocket, and that will mean it will spread like wildfire, and it will just take over. The state authority needs to maintain 100% authority in order to be 1% successful. I need to be 1% successful in order to be 100% successful. So I think, and I don't think that's the kind of system. I don't think South Africa is a very good testbed for that, because I don't think they have the, even in places like Iran, I don't think they have that sort of inventive aggression to find a new system, a different system to replace the old one, because the old one is no longer working. And I think we will have that. Now let me play a little bit more here.
So the question is, what do I think will happen? Well, I believe we are heading towards a sectarian country, a country that is divided along ethnic, racial, and even political lines. A divided nation, one with Muslim areas, some Sunni and some Shiite, black areas, Hindu areas, Sikh areas. There will be areas for every different ethnic group. The country will fracture, and people will naturally separate. And as this separation takes place, there will be increased violence. Tensions will rise, inter-ethnic conflicts will flare regularly, and different groups will fight each other. They will jostle for a greater position in the hierarchy of our broken multicultural country.
Yes, I do agree with that. It's a bleak picture, but I think it's accurate. It needn't be bleak, because I think our prevailing, our winning, will come out of that. So now I think I would go a little bit further than Mark Collett goes here. He does later, I needn't play the clip, but he talks about the recent flag flying and says that these are signs of ethnic pride, signs of asserting that this is our area and that migrants are not welcome here. Yes, I agree with that. I think that is right. It's not casual patriotism. That's not the reason why people are flying the St. George flags from lampposts. And it's not why a lot of left-wing people are going around tearing them down either. And he also does acknowledge that there will be accelerationism within Islamic areas. So, and it'll be significant on both sides. I think the potential is more extreme. So I want to give you some examples in a second. Here's a video from Mohammed Hijab, the fellow who tussled with Douglas Murray recently. It's a TikTok video. It's very short. I'll play this to you.
Why don't you, the far right, come to the immigrant areas? Because you know what's going to happen. Wallah, you know what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you'll get battered. That's what's going to happen. Physical. I'm telling you, you go to the immigrant areas, you will get battered.
I want to play you the next couple of clips back to back. Well, this first one is me asking, does anyone think they'll leave quietly because they're told to? So that's me saying, actually, just passing legislation saying, please leave. That's not going to work. You're going to have to go a lot further than that. And that's significant for reasons I'll explain.
No need for that. We're on the same side, bro.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are, bro.
So what you see there, that first video is after the Southport stabbings, after 3 innocent little girls were murdered, violent armed Muslims mobs caused havoc on our streets. Basically, they think that's their territory. That's an assertion of territory. That is a sectarianism that Mark Collett is talking about. And that one there, I don't know if you could hear it, but you've probably seen it. That's the white lefty saying to a bunch of Muslims, we're on the same side. And he's told, no, we're not. So again, that is the sectarianism coming out hard. That is going to come out or a damn sight harder when if the state breaks down, as I think it will. So I agree with Mark Collett that that separation is happening and it will continue to happen steadily. And so far, whilst the state stands up, it will be accompanied by politics that spans the racial divide. So it will be us versus left-wing white Brits and a lot of foreigners. I think that's likely to be the divide. But I think the sort of the ferocity and speed and unfortunately the brutality of that divide will ramp up an awful lot if and when the welfare state and then the state itself collapses, because I think we'll be gripped by fears about survival, confusion, desperation, a desperate need for safety. And I think that will wipe out the political divide, because when the state goes down, I think people's currently underestimated ethnocentrism will come out from under the ice, and it will. I think there are already signs of how hard it will be, a lot harder than we can imagine at the moment. I'm thinking, say, the Portadown riots recently. The people of Portadown were very hardline. They effectively didn't want pretty much anyone but themselves there. First of all, they started with Roma Gypsies, then I think it went to Filipinos, and then to Eastern Europeans that they didn't want there, and I think some black people as well. And similarly, in the 2011 riots, what I was struck by is the stark nature of ethnic division when it came down to people coming out on the streets to defend their own areas. And again, you saw that one where the white guy system, Muslims in their own Muslim area, were on the same side, and they say, no, we're not. So I think if the state breaks down, that political divide will go, and it will simply be a very stark, harsh, quite unpleasant ethnic, racial divide. And there's also the issue that I talk about, which is a little hard to grasp. That's the issue of feedback loops. But I'll put it as simply as possible. I think that will apply to an awful lot of things. It will apply to crime. I think it will probably apply to drug use. But I think it will apply to ethnicity. And that is, the more people separate out, the more they will separate out. So that, let's say, only 50% of the white population are hardline, die-hard multiculturalists. So half of us separate out and the other half say, no, we're prepared to carry on living with the foreigners. What they'll find is the concentration of foreigners, the ratio of foreigners, suddenly doubles because half the white people have separated themselves out. And so that 50-50 will then go to 75-25 because some of those die-hard multiculturalists, white multiculturalists will say, actually, I didn't mind it when the ratio was half of what it is now. Now that the ratio has doubled, it's too much for me, so I'm going to go. And then when it gets to 75-25, then a lot of the others will say, actually, the ratio is, that's too high a ratio for me. And then it'll go to 90-10, and then 5-95, until all you get is a few suicidal white people whose principles mean more than their lives, or whose existence among their multicultural existence means more than their lives, and they will stay in the multicultural areas. But that will be very few. So I think those feedback loops will mean that ethnic separation will be very hardline and I think very complete. Now, another point I want to make is that at about the 25-minute mark here, Mark Collett talks about, I think as a precedent, the ethnic separation or the population separation that occurred in Northern Ireland. And I think seeing a simile between that and the situation that's emerging here, I don't think Northern Ireland is a good comparison at all. Actually, I think that it's I think the separation has the potential to be much more brutal in this country or over here than it was in this situation than it was in Northern Ireland. What I'd like to refer to here is, if I go to there, that is a series of articles that were written by a fellow called El Ingles for a website called Gates of Vienna in 2011, where what he does is called Our Muslim Troubles, Lessons from Northern Ireland. Now that's a long essay. I think it runs at about 50 pages. It's well worth reading. It's well worth reading. Decades ahead of its time, and very good. Exciting to read at the time. But basically what, if I can summarize the points he was making, he was saying that it looks like being a very violent divide, the divide between us and the Muslims is what he was talking about there. It is going to be much more violent than it was in Northern Ireland. What he says is that the divide between us and Muslims is an organic divide. It arises naturally out of the population, whereas in Northern Ireland it was contingent. It was related to politics, provision of housing, religion, and adherence, and sort of social norms, things that could be addressed. That's what he meant by being contingent, not organic. It just can't be addressed by politics in the division between us and the foreigners in England. Also, he outlines why the violence from each side is likely to be extreme. Because normally, if you have a force that's trying to invade and take over, they don't want to use too much violence because that creates resistance. It persuades people that they should resist, and which is why the nationalist, Catholic nationalist population were, or the balance of violence between nationalists and loyalists was almost the same. It was much closer than you might think. It wasn't all IRA violence, because the IRA couldn't just go on killing sprees as much as they wanted. So the pub bombing campaign on the mainland, it did them a lot of harm. But Muslims they're not bound by such considerations. It's an article of faith to be as vicious and aggressive as possible. That is how Islam has expanded. So you get a lot of violence from the Islamic side. We, on the other hand, have no incentive being the sort of the resident force, we have no incentive to rein in brutality, because all we need to show is you are not going to take over. It won't be worth your while if you do. And on top of that, what El Ingles was saying in this article is the state will be implicated, because it will be seen as having brought us to this bad situation. It won't be able to moderate the situation. And thirdly, what he talks about is the weakness of Muslims. Muslims will be hemmed up in very congested ghettos. They won't have the materials for weapons manufacture, for bomb manufacture. They won't have the area, the space to train or to test weapons, to test bombs. So they'll be in a militarily very, very weak situation, which could mean that they are more vulnerable to brutality. So what he's saying there is it could be a brutal situation. And I think, again, that brings me back to my view that I think it could be that Mark Collett underestimates how severe it could get, particularly if the state, the welfare state and the state collapse. Now, the next thing he talks about is the motives, what the authorities are doing, why they are so hostile to us, that they want those minorities to beat us down, and that our governments fear us.
Them to win. The government wants them to beat us down. The government wants ethnic minorities to have the whip hand over white Britons. And that is because the government fears one thing above all else: an organised, racially aware, ethnocentric white community. And that's why the government is doing everything it can to keep us down. That is why the government helps ethnic minority communities to persecute us. It is why they try to pump our heads full of multiracial propaganda in order to deracinate us. It's why the government has weaponized the justice system to terrorize anyone who dares to speak out against their anti-white policies.
Yes, I agree with that. And the key question is, why are our authorities doing this? What's their motive? I think it's for power. If they can use an invading force, a foreign force, to grind us down, to reduce our circumstances, to make us more fearful, more dependent, more divided, to take away our sense of identity, it gives them more power over us, like a wife beater over his beaten wife. And they're in the business of power. That is their addiction. And so the question is, why do we let them? Well, because they are making welfare promises to us, providing welfare and saying they're going to manage the economy. And we have become dependent upon that, psychologically dependent, if not physically dependent. But that begs the question, what then happens when the welfare state and the economy break, when the welfare state goes away? When that happens, we won't have the incentive to let them do it to us anymore. And that's when I think it will feel like we have lost, but that's when I think we will have started to win. Now, Mark Collett goes on to talk about the need for community building. He talks about ethnocentric communities, and I would encourage anyone to participate in that community building. Join Patriotic Alternative for that, to help them to do that. I think that is a good thing, to build community like that. I think that's what we need. It will create far more benefit than pipe dreams about getting voted into power, which I don't think is going to happen. Now, I won't be joining Patriotic Alternative because I still think they are wedded to a statist solution. I think Mark Collett thinks that the state will stay standing. It will remain the power in the land. It will retain pretty much its monopoly on violence. And at some stage, the good guys will be able to get hold of the state and impose solutions, including remigration. I won't do that. I think that will be very bloody. I think it will involve massacre, really terrible massacre. And the way I look at it, the way I put it is, what happens? You saw those videos I played of those Muslims around that roundabout and the people saying, we're not on the same side, or Mohammed hijab. What happens, supposing you get a remigrating government in power and it passes legislation saying foreigners must leave. What happens when they say no? What do you do? If you've made a lot of promises saying we are going to remigrate all these people, do you give up there? Do you say, well, sorry voters, they've said no, they said they're not going to leave. What do you do then? Do you do police raids? What if they then weaponise, if they booby trap their flats, if they throw bricks off the off their balconies? What if they throw boiling sugar water in the faces of the cops who come? So then you're going to have to bring the army in. And what are you going to do in some mixed areas or in foreigner areas? You're going to have to comb through them. Are you going to do that? To comb through every neighbourhood and to sift and sort people and then take them to holding camps and then get them on the aeroplanes? How are you going to make those aeroplanes work when you've got say 300 very hostile foreigners on board who quite a few of whom would rather die or martyr themselves than go back, kill everyone else on the plane rather than go back to their homelands. And so I think it is likely to result in massacre, and I won't do that. My personal view is I think if I get involved in massacre, I am likely to go to hell. I don't want to do that. It's for selfish reasons. I'm not going to get involved in massacre. And I think people who are wedded to the statist solution, who think the state is going to be the way to solve this, have to ask themselves, what happens if the people we tell to leave say no and they resist us? How do we enforce it then? How do we make them go? I think it is much better simply to wait, and much more likely to happen, simply to wait for the state to collapse and then to allow ourselves to separate out. All these populations will separate out voluntarily, and then all we need to do is to stand back and refuse to support those foreign populations as the conditions in their area plummet fast. And we simply need to allow them to stew in their own juice and then let them remigrate themselves voluntarily rather than live in the really terrible conditions that I think they will make for themselves in the areas that they demand and create for themselves. So I think that is better. That's not PA's solution. So I don't think I'll be joining PA, but I would encourage anyone to join in with their community building. I think that's excellent. That will be very, very useful if society does break down the way I think that it will.
The first step is creating a place for us. A place for us to weather the storm. A place where we are put first, not for a special day, a week, or a designated month, but always. A place where we can thrive, where we can express ourselves, and where we can grow. We must build a place that no one will build for us.
Now, I disagree with that part of the speech only to the extent that I think it isn't necessary for us to build a new place, to create a place for us, some separate place. I think the only places that we need are the places that we already live in. Those are the places that we need to take back. I don't think that sense of community, I don't think it's a physical space, I think it's a mental space in us. Basically having the determination to take back our own towns and cities and the ability to do so. That is the change, that is the community, that is the physical space that we need. So I think it would be wasted effort, although good for morale, to build a separate place somewhere out in the countryside. Also, I disagree quite strongly with the idea that the isolated white individual who stands alone stands no chance, because I think the strong way to build collectivism is to rely upon the voluntary individual choices of people. I think that's the only way to secure strong collectivism. It seems the other way around, but the reason is because individuals making choices on their own, that is based upon consent, which is strong, and the overarching brute force state imposing it upon us, that is based upon coercion, which is weak because it involves reluctance on our part, and that undermines it. And the way that I think this will work in reality is people deciding, individual people, English men and women, deciding to join legal systems that exclude foreigners, legal systems that we adopt voluntarily, that we join voluntarily as individuals, not because of the overarching state. So I'd like to repeat how I think that will happen, if you give me a second. If I go back here to hold on. If I go back here to what Catherine Blakelock, the collapse solution that I summarise, we won't vote our way out. Finance will collapse the government and social security. That will lead to violence and disorder. That then leads to ethnic segregation as we become paranoid about our safety. We'll all retreat into our own communities, into our own societies, amongst people who look, think, act and speak the way we do. Those are the people whom we will trust. And then ethnic areas that are separated out, they will have no access to benefits, no access to wealth creation, no access to employment, no access to services, to institutions of civil society, of basic amenities, and conditions will plummet fast for them, and then they'll be more amenable to a free ticket home. The bit that she missed out there, and this is the key bit, this is the bit I keep banging on about, this is the strange bit, I think it will become easier to grasp, well, the more times I repeat it, but as the situation plays out, then I think this will become more familiar. I think it was really unfamiliar when I first started saying to people, we're not going to vote our way out of this. People would say, well, of course we are. That's the only method available. I think it's fairly commonplace for people to say, no, we can't vote our way out of this. I think the legal solution I'm talking about here, I think that might be something that people start to look at more and more as the state system begins to break down. And that, I say it again, number 5 for my collapse solution, we will seek protection of the law of our self-governing legal charters or codes that you join voluntarily like a club, where each member agrees he can be punished if he doesn't treat other members according to the rules, i.e. the law. That's law that you vote for with your feet, not with the ballot. Now, and then I also say no English person will join a legal system that allows foreigners to be a part of it, simply because they feel unsafe. So I think that is the key aspect. Now I hope the points I've made and my quibbling doesn't detract from what I think is the best nationalist speech or online rant, whatever you want to call it, that I've heard all year. Now you can go and listen to it, go and watch it yourself. If you go here, then I'll just show. It's on YouTube, it's on X, The Path to Victory, Mark Collett speech, Patriotic Alternative Conference 2025. Go and listen to it. Very good.